Hey, welcome to Small Business Big Visibility. We are so fortunate this week we get to have John Parks. He's a partner, chief marketer at ClickFunnels. He's spent over $150 million on ads, but not only spend it, but was successful with spending it. So he's spent more money than most people can ever imagine. Hey, John, tell us your story because you've got such an interesting backstory too, don't you?
Yeah, man, I've been just playing with entrepreneurship since I was a kid. Honestly, like I'll tell you what, I was at a wedding just this last weekend with my wife and we were driving around my old neighborhood. I hadn't really driven around my old neighborhood for this kind of dates me, but I don't know, 25 years or something, because it's down in Utah. And we were driving around and I was like, "Oh, this right here, this is the corner where we used to sell snow cones, right?
Oh,
We used to
nice. Yeah.
sell them right here." And I was just telling her like I've always had that entrepreneurship bug in me. And I'm just always thinking like, where's this need? How can I solve it? What are people wanting? How can I do whatever it is, arbitrage, all kinds of stuff. I mean, so when I was a kid, not only did we do the snow cones, we started to think, and this is just how we thought, me and my brothers were like, well, if people are stopping for snow cones, they might also want something else. So why don't we offer other things? And so got on our bikes and rode 2 miles to the grocery store and expanded our inventory. And we're also selling donuts and candy bars,
Wow.
and there's that arbitrage of like, well, I know I can get the donuts at the grocery store for in that time, probably $3 a dozen and I could sell them probably for 50 cents a piece. Well, what's 50 times 12? Double my money, right? So like kind of a thing. So like because I reduced that transaction cost. So I don't know, I've always just been thinking of entrepreneurship, and one of the more fascinating classes I took in college, even as a Boy Scout, I remember I took the salesmanship merit badge and just loved it. I was
Mm.
like, "Oh, this is fascinating." And then the economics merit badge, and then I loved the economics class in college, and I don't know, it just makes so much sense the way it all works and clicks together. So that's always been my thing. I remember in college, I was buying and selling real estate until 2008 hit, and then everything went belly up when it comes to real estate. And we got saddled with a bunch of houses that couldn't sell, and the debts associated with them, and
Oh, wow.
it was honestly a nightmare.
Hmm.
But that's part of the entrepreneurship journey, is that you go through these cycles, is what they say, and you sometimes you're on top and sometimes you're on the bottom. But what you hope to do as an entrepreneur is always be cycling upwards, like an upward
Right.
spiral.
So when you were saddled with all that debt and the houses you couldn't sell, what would you say was a takeaway looking back at that moment now?
You learn lessons. So one is, to try to figure out, well, what's my exit strategy if things go belly up? How am I mitigating my risks is always a big one to ask yourself.
Hmm.
And as an entrepreneur, that's not often the first thing you ask yourself, and it shouldn't be. I think that would paralyze you. So like you can't just be asking that all the time, but you should get in a habit of having you or somebody at least visit that. You know what I mean? Now and
Right.
then,
Yep.
where else am I exposed, and how can I better mitigate those risks? Um, we all have different personality types, and a lot of times an entrepreneur personality type doesn't want to think about the risks, and quite frankly, they probably shouldn't spend much time thinking about them because it's going to dampen your creativity, your visionary nature as an entrepreneur. But know where your weaknesses are and find somebody who can help you cover them. You know,
Mm.
hey, who can help me see where these pitfalls might be, and how to put as many manhole covers over them as possible. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep. Definitely. So after the real estate, what'd you do?
Okay, so yeah, the real estate thing, and then it kind of went belly up, and I got married as everything was looking amazing, right? So my
Mm.
wife married what she thought was like the super successful entrepreneurial guy that, I mean, maybe he's a little short, but hey, he doesn't have much hair, but otherwise everything's great, you know what I mean? Kind of a thing. Hey, he dances, right? I was minoring in ballroom dance in the college, and I was having a great time, and that's how I met her. And then within a year of getting married, everything just goes wrong.
Wow.
And it's just So much so that there were times I couldn't sleep. I wanted to throw up. I just this pit in my stomach the whole time. Just so it was really, really bad. And she's just like, okay, like I'm in it, like I'm here for you. So she's just the most supportive person. And so like as we're
Yeah,
kind of
that
going
speaks
through and trying to
volumes
figure
for
out how
your
to,
wife that you're at the top when she meets you, and then she's still with you when you hit rock
I
bottom, right?
know, really, she's my champion for sure.
Definitely. Anyway, sorry, please go on.
No, she's the best. Yeah, you make me tear up if we talk too much about her. So anyway, so there we were kind of at the bottom of it all, and she knows I'm entrepreneurial, and again I'm just being scrappy and trying to do my thing, and not finding any traction. And sometimes that's the case, sometimes you're spinning your wheels and this one's not working. Okay, let's try. I've got an idea over here. It's not working, and you sink some money over here and you sink some money over there and you put a lot of time over here and you just can't get something to take off. And so we went to a family reunion actually, and she's just, on the drive, 2 hour drive. She's telling me, oh, this is my uncle, and he does this, and then I have a cousin named Russell Brunson, and he's just kind of entrepreneurial, and um, and he does this and that and all this stuff. And so the so that like so she's she's naming off all these people, and I'm like, okay, well, anyway, I meet this Russell Brunson guy, and he's like ends up being kind of early in his entrepreneurial journey, but he's definitely an entrepreneur, and he's like, you know what? I think he could potentially sense that I was in kind of in a slump, right?
Hmm.
And he told me this concept of cycling. He's like, entrepreneurs sometimes they're up, sometimes they're down, and oftentimes it takes somebody to help you come back up when you're on the bottom. And there's no shame in that, there's no problem with being in a cycle, the bottom of a cycle and having that. And so I became in that for those few years what's often called an intrapreneur, which is a really interesting concept that I think that, people listening to your podcast might relate to. Sometimes you want to be the front and you're out there, you're the pioneer, you're planting the new flags, you got arrows in your back, but you don't care, you're still going, kind of a concept, right? But sometimes you might be at a point in your life where you feel more like being an entrepreneur, like a not maybe like not a majority shareholder in the effort, but kind of a minority where you're still out there doing the entrepreneurial things, but it's not your full neck on the line, your full risk. You're working within a group. And that can be a good spot to be in sometimes, right? So I became more intrapreneur for a few years there as I joined Russell Brunson, and he's like, hey, come work with me. He's like, work with me. I want you to run these projects. And so I started running this project for him, and then that project, and then that pretty soon, I became an equity partner in the companies that he has, and it's been fantastic. And that's kind of been how I got out of the bottom of that cycle, and so yeah, there's no shame in entrepreneurship. It's a really healthy thing at times.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. So how did you get into the ads world? Because that's a far bit different than either real estate or ballroom dance, right?
Right, I didn't have more problems. Yes, yeah. I look at this breakaway ballroom t-shirt. Right, that's I help on Saturdays with a team here locally, and it's fun. Um, Still doing the dance thing, but the so as an entrepreneur, right? You're whether you're working, within an organization or you're out there on your own on the front, there's often moments that come up where you need to learn something or do something and you have to, but that pill's gonna be hard to swallow because it's like, it's a brand new thing I've never done before.
Yeah.
Like if somebody were to say, you got to change your brake pads and you don't even know where to start, like, okay, I'll start YouTubing some things and wrenching on some things and seeing if I can get anywhere near those brake pads. You know what I mean? Like you don't even know where to start. You just kind of start poking around. And so it was kind of like that. Like we decided, we're like, hey, I remember the day Russell was sitting at his desk. We were in this room and it was just Russell, Brent, and me at this point. And I think we had one secretary helping answer the phones and some emails and something, right? That was it.
Wow.
Our company had shrunk for, for a variety of reasons that weren't fun, but there was just a few of us. And Russell's like, you know what we don't do? Brett, you're working on partnership promotions and affiliate relationships and stuff like that, but we have no one in here is running ads. Like that's got to be a whole new avenue of growth that we're not doing. who wants to do ads? And me always as the guy interested in learning the new thing and willing, I'm like, I'll do it, right? So I literally just start buying some courses of some guys who said they're good at ads. And so I start studying this guy named Don and studying this other guy, David Fry, and what does he say about advertising and marketing, and started studying this other guy. So I start, learning a few things. Soon I feel like I'm comfortable enough to start. So I start spending $50 a day and I don't really know what I'm seeing, and it's just this really interesting journey of like, you can study all you want, but until you jump in the pool and start swimming, you don't really know what you're doing. And then you're like, oh, this is this, okay, and I did this wrong. And usually it's like I did three things wrong today and one thing right, but at least I've learned that those are the wrong ones and this is the right one, you know?
Yep,
And
yep.
then you keep going forward. So it's been fun, but I mean, at this point, I'm over a decade in online advertising. It's by far my super specialty. I speak from stages, to thousands of people about it. Um, I sell, courses and teach, but like it's become like this what I am, right? John Parks is the prominent Facebook marketing advertiser, having spent over $150 million. People come to me all the time. So it's like I went from I saw a need, being willing to jump into it, to becoming a master at it.
Hmm. Gotcha. So at this point, now that you're teaching and sharing, do you take on external clients, or are you just in the realm of I'm going to show people through courses or whatever what they could do?
Yeah, so client work is hard, right? Client work is a lot of expectations and a lot of fulfillment and a lot of times you're doing it right, but they don't know if you are and all this. So I haven't really gotten into client work recently. It's mostly education. I'm gonna hop in with you to your ads account together. We're gonna click on the right buttons, do the thing, evaluate your stats. I'm gonna tell you what to do over the next week. A week from now, we'll get back on and do some more auditing and stuff like that. So I really like to help people um, do their own fishing per se.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
And what's your target ideal person for working with you that way?
Yeah, I do like the small medium businesses, somebody who's willing to invest in themselves and learn to grow,
Hmm.
and learn to like gain this skill, you know, um, and willing to pay so many $100 per hour of training so that I can dedicate my time and really help them out. But small medium businesses, I don't like to go too big, but I mean anyone who has 50 employees or less, I feel like that's a niche that could really serve well.
Awesome. Well, that's great. So
Yeah.
when you're not running the ads in ClickFunnels and you're not ballroom dancing and you're not teaching other people ads, what else do you like to do?
See, oh man, I do kind of fun stuff. So let's see here. I like mountain biking.
Hmm.
I go with my kids mountain biking. Um, Less than I want. I want to go more often. We've got chickens. We've got some land and like 25 birds,
Oh,
which
wow.
we love. We just have a good time. Like kids hold them and half pets, half chickens. And so I know I shouldn't say this out loud, but we've got more eggs than we can handle. And I know that that's a touchy subject right now, but we really enjoy the chickens and we enjoy the eggs. My kids love eating eggs. We literally eat 20 eggs a day. So having 25 birds is what we need. And that being said, a big family, I'm a big family. There's six kids and my wife and I, and so there's eight of us, and each of us eating three eggs a day at least, we're loving that. Got a dog, got some acreage. So for as online as I am, you know, 9 to 5, right? As long online as I am throughout my day, and my whole world is digital marketing. I love that I can turn it off and be like a homesteader in the evenings and on the weekends, because it's a needed reset,
Hmm.
to get off the blue light, to get off the screens, to get off the thing and just back to nature. I really enjoy that.
So is that your key to success of being able to separate work and non-work life, family life, if you will? Like, is that your key? Is that you do shut it off and walk away and live the homestead life? Is that it?
Yeah, let me tell you some tips that have worked for me and some things I'm still working on. My wife still gets after me. We'll start with that list. Just, um, I probably have too many work apps on my phone where people can still contact me, right? A
Mm-hmm.
couple of them I need to be there because, like I said, there's times where we're literally spending $150,000 today in advertising. And at any given hour, if something is not working, I need to know, right? It's thousands of dollars could have gone down the drain just because something wasn't toggled on or whatever. So so I do need to be able to be reached.
Mm-hmm.
But to mitigate the mental pressure of always being on every single day when I finish my workday, before I start my workday, I get a physical, not digital. This is important for me, an actual like, physical piece of paper and write down the maybe the six things I want to get done today and then rewrite them in priority order.
Mm-hmm.
First, it's just a brain dump. Da, 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 da. These are all the things I'm thinking about. And then it's like, okay, now we prioritize them. And I have this prioritization model that studying a bunch of different people, when it comes to productivity and stuff, I kind of developed this. And so you'll probably hear pieces of it from Brian Tracy and pieces of it from Zig Ziglar and pieces of it from Jim Rohn or whatever. But I kind of came up with this model. So it's the ABCDE model, okay?
Mm-hmm.
A, and they're it's a mnemonic, is that the idea? A stands for absolutely. Absolutely has to get done today. If it doesn't get done today, there's big consequences. So that's an A priority.
Mm-hmm.
B is best if it gets done today, but there's minimal consequences. Like this is something that could be done tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Best if it gets done today. C is could get done today. Not a big deal if it does or doesn't, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those of us who don't prioritize often spend our times doing C's and B's way before we do the A's. We just do because they seem easier, funner, easier to access, whatever. But we don't get those A's done, and then there's this prevailing stress that's in the back of our minds because we're trying to tell ourselves that that A is there, you have to get it done, and you're doing C's, right?
Yep.
So helping you to prioritize it and physically write it down really helps to set you in the right pace. So that's the C. D is delegate it. This is an important one that we don't often put on our list. If it's in your mind, you need to write it down. You need to flesh it out. The Chinese talk about, because Taoists talk about mind like water, right? So you have to get to this point at the beginning of your day. Some people even do it the night beforehand. You just gotta flush it all out and get it all out until then it's on paper because then you can move it around, you can prioritize it, you can delegate it. If it's in your head, you can't do that. We're not good as humans at doing that. We're not good at storing tasks in our head. We're good at computing and problem solving and bending logic and moving stuff. We're really good at that creativity stuff, but we're not good at sequential lists and prioritizations in our head. We're just not. I don't know. We've proven that. So you write down all the potential things that you could or should delegate. Write those down too,
Mm-hmm.
because you want to be able to A, see that they're delegated so you can relax about it. And then B, potentially a note as to who you delegated it to and another note about like when to follow up on it, you know? And maybe you have a VA you can work with or an EA. Maybe you have somebody who's helping you with this. Maybe you literally have some plumbing stuff that needs to get done in the house. And while you could do it, you'd rather prioritize it to the handyman because you don't have time for it. You know what I mean? So like, what am I going to delegate? So you look at your list and be like, man, is this really something I should handle? And that's one of the first things I do with this list before I decide A, B, and C's as I go through and I decide the D's and the E's. E is eliminate.
Oh,
Sometimes we have things just hanging out in our head and they actually don't need to be done. They don't. It's not important.
yep.
If it didn't get done, it doesn't even matter, right? Write it all out, cross off all the E's, and literally eliminate them. Delegate everything you possibly can. Everything you possibly can. That's the way to think about it. Not like, should I, but it's just like, can this be delegated? If so, do it. Can this be delegated? If so, do it. Can this be delegated? Then it leaves you with things you'll rank C, B, and A. And you got to do that if you're a busy person with a family of eight with 25 chickens staring at you all day. No, I'm just kidding. And I've got lots of employees relying on me. I've got, businesses relying on me. So you have to do that or else you'll go crazy.
Definitely. That's powerful tips right there.
Yeah. So I like to do that. On a good day, I'll have fleshed that out really well. On a bad day, I just get started and I can tell when I don't do it. I can tell.
Yep. So when you get done at the end of the day and you still have those A's left on the list, how do you extract that from your mind so that you can go be present in other things?
If there's still some A's on the list, you need to trust your list. This is something from David Allen, Getting Things Done. One of the most fascinating books I've ever read. Not necessarily high action, especially with the title Getting Things Done, but fascinating book, right? And you'll hear some of the concepts I just taught in that book too. Um, you have to trust your list. You have to have somewhere that you can trust that will store your things, your to-dos for you. They won't get lost. You know they're there. And then all you have to keep in your mind is the fact that you have a list. You don't have to keep in your mind what's on the list.
Hmm.
It's an interesting thing. And it's quite peaceful, if I may say so. Um, so you have this messy list. You've been working on it all day, scribble all over it, whatever. Anything that's not done goes on to tomorrow's list, and you just transfer it right over, and it hangs out there. Maybe you prioritize it in the morning when you have more clarity. Maybe you do it right then, kind of a personal preference thing. But you need to make sure that it doesn't ever get lost, and usually rewrite it so it's not a part of the mess anymore. It's in a
Hmm.
clean spot. You take that pad, whatever you're using, you tuck it in your briefcase. You know where it is. It's right next to your laptop. If either of those things get lost, you're up a creek anyway, so you might as well put them together. And then you literally turn your laptop off. Not sleep mode, not just close it, not leave some tabs open. You literally shut everything down and power cycle down. And that is a psychological indication that there are no tabs open, there's no browser open, it's all shut off and safely saved until I can get to it again tomorrow.
Wow. Yeah. So, transitioning back, if I could bend you back to a few minutes ago, you talked about how businesses and entrepreneurials, there's these cycles of good times, bad times, and you've probably been through a few of those cycles at this point. If you were talking to someone who's running either in that downward or at the bottom, what would you tell them right now?
Yeah, that's hard. Okay, so keep your chin up, and it's gonna. One thing to realize, just psychological health, is that to realize that um, storms they come and go, right? They never are always there. So to kind of realize that, and recently I heard the analogy. I think it was in like a general conference religion talk or something similar at church that I heard. And this is just a story that stuck with me, whether, I don't know the source of it, but that buffaloes will run into a storm.
Hmm.
Okay, so a storm's coming, and the buffaloes will run into the storm, which is literally shortening the distance of the storm because they'll run, so many hundred miles through the storm, and their exposure to the storm is minimized because they're willing to take it head on. Cows do the opposite. They'll run away from the storm and be stuck in the storm for a long time, and they can get really sick and die from it. Um, So oftentimes it's to do that. You have to turn, you have to face the fears, you have to close the loops, you have to solve the problems that are hitting you as effectively as you can. Get the help you need. Don't be scared to ask for help. Sometimes as entrepreneurs, we go it alone. We like to kind of power through. Don't forget to ask for help with people that you think would be helpful on a business, on on just like talking through it. Maybe it's a friend you go to lunch and just talk through things. Because sometimes talking through it can be huge, Jason. It can be a huge thing. Like it's so in your head and it's so inflated. And you just get to this point where you're just like, it's an overwhelming problem. And then you talk to your friend and it's actually not overwhelming. Once you get it out, it's actually okay. Like, oh, we can do this. We can deal with this. This is something I know how to deal with. So talk through it, get help in the areas you need to get help with, face the storm instead of avoiding it. And I think those are your best things.
Yeah, those are great options. Now on that cycle again, you've been obviously if you've been at the bottom, you've been at the top. What are some of those moments that you celebrate as the big successes in life?
Okay, yeah, you definitely should celebrate. Sometimes I forget to. I don't give myself the credit for the wins, but do. I think that's a big thing that you mentioned to celebrate. I think that's really important. It can also be helpful to have a network that, a personal network, friends, family, whatever. And even with your spouse, if you're married to, and even with your kids, I think this is important too. Sometimes we hide our finances and our business stuff from our kids.
Hmm.
I think it can be really helpful for them to have some exposure, not necessarily to all the stresses at work or whatever, but like to know that you went through this hard thing and you succeeded. Like that gives them courage in life too. So to try to celebrate those wins as you hit milestones, as you set milestones and hit them, to bring them up and at home and with your family, because a lot of times we don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So many people want to protect their
Hmm.
family from whatever it is, the good or the bad, right? And I hear you
Right?
saying that's not always the best approach.
Because yeah, I mean, how will your kids know how to face storms if they don't have your example?
Hmm. Yeah. Now, can we transition back to ads for a minute and talk in that
Yeah,
world?
let's
Awesome.
talk about
So,
that.
so oftentimes the people that listen to this podcast maybe aren't quite at the $150 million that they've spent level, right? With ads.
Yeah,
Very few people probably make it to that level in life. But
right.
if someone's thinking about ads and they're looking at the different platforms and maybe they run a small service business or a local company, maybe they're a solopreneur, few employees, somewhere in that realm. What's your thoughts, advice? What would you tell someone who's thinking about ads but maybe hasn't really dipped their toe in it too much?
Okay, so there's a lot of noise out there. Every platform is interested in you spending your ad dollars on their platform. They want those fees, okay? But I'll cut through all the noise and tell you that there's kind of only two places to pay attention to, especially as you're beginning. If you're mentioning kind of somebody who's really getting just starting in ads. One, especially if you're a local business and you rely on local traffic, people coming to your store or your farm or your practice or whatever it is. A huge, huge, huge thing to get a handle on is your maps listing. Are you showing up in Apple Maps? Are you showing up in Google Maps? Are you showing up on both Android and Apple phones? Is where most people will be searching for you, usually on a fairly quick search, like pizza is what I literally type into my Maps app and it says search for pizza near you and a few dots pop up. Are you one of those dots? If you're not, how do you get on there? Make sure you're there. How can you optimize that listing, right? Huge for local businesses. I don't think they pay enough attention to it. Some of them don't. Um, it used to be all about your roadside sign and the logo on your building, and those are big, but those only catch your eye if you're driving by. What about the person who's 5 miles away? They're coming based on the app. Okay. Huge.
Yep.
So think about all the ways. How can I get more stars? More reviews and higher reviews. What can I do to incentivize my customers to give me those? How can I optimize my listing? What it says, what I'm listed under, are those as hitting as many categories as I serve? You know, if somebody types in dentist and you show up, that's great. What if somebody types in teeth whitening? Do you also show up? Maybe you should show up if that's the thing you do, right? So how many ways can you generate more traffic off of those maps apps? I think that's really big. Way bigger than potentially ranking in Google, which is a harder task. That's called search engine optimization, SEO. You hear people pitch you on that. But how many times, I'll just ask you, Jason, how many times are you going to Google on your laptop and you're asking Google, where should I eat pizza near me? You don't do that, right?
No, that
That
that's
is
a phone
so
function.
that's so many steps away from what's actually being done. So somebody trying to sell you SEO services for your pizza joint, could it help? Might be, but that's like 10 steps down the road. Right now, focus on getting those map listings, right?
Yep.
So that'd be step one. Get maximized exposure on those apps as good as you can. And part of that is people reviewing you. People might give you good reviews, bad reviews. On a bad review, always respond to it and say, "Oh, I'm sorry you had," because people respect that. They don't expect you to have 100% perfect reviews, but they do appreciate it if you'll respond to a negative review. Even if that negative reviewer doesn't appreciate it or care, everybody else who eventually comes in and reads that negative review does care that you responded.
Yeah.
Something to keep in mind, right? A lot of times we're like, oh, I don't want to respond to the negativity, or we get all bent out of shape because your 49 customers gave you a good review, but the 50th one didn't like you and didn't give you a good review. Well, calm down. It's not you, it's them, right?
Yep.
Okay, so secondary to that would be Facebook ads. Now Meta owns Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp. It's a conglomerate, right? Um, that's the second best place to generate traffic. And if you're not a local business, potentially the first best, right? Um, there are many other places you can advertise. You'll hear of TikTok and YouTube, Google Ads, all these things. They're all viable places to generate traffic. But Meta Ads is the easiest place to start by far, by multiples, the easiest place to start. So if you haven't started, that's the place to start. It's as easy as like YouTubing it. Like you could literally begin by watching, you know, three, four, get some perspectives, but three or four unique people teaching YouTube ads, and you're gonna get a handle on like, oh, okay, I see how this functions, and then you can start doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So Facebook or Meta ads and making sure that they have their maps listing is that's the key to starting.
Yeah, yeah, having the listing and then optimizing it, be the first one listed, be the one that's best reviewed, be the one that says all the right words and you show up for all the right searches. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
maximize it.
Yeah. So what's your take? Jumping tracks again. What's your take on the AI world?
Okay, so that's fun. Yeah. It's fun because as a marketer, I know why they use the term AI. It's not actually AI because AI stands for artificial intelligence, and we don't have that. Doesn't exist. There's quite a few developers. They kind of fall in two camps. Quite a few developers who think it's not possible. It's more like a tangent line, in calculus, if anyone remembers calculus. The way you kind of you can approach the line, but you can't ever quite get there, right? You kind of go like this. And so there's a lot of them that think we'll get close but never hit it because it's not a possible line to cross,
Mm-hmm.
to actually generate artificial intelligence. Some think we can, some think we can't. The existing things are actually large language learning models. I wish I could remember right on the fly what ChatGPT stands for, but it stands for something like that, generative, something something. So it's acknowledging the fact that it's not AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there isn't AI, but these things should be seen as very, very effective and efficient libraries or encyclopedias um, or historical research agents. Okay, things that can help you from a moment ago backwards. They can't help you forward. Only humans can do that. Only humans can think up. If you get into the deep psychology of it, the deep philosophy, only humans can even conceive of making a decision in the future because the possibilities are actually endless if you philosophically. You could you could go in any endless direction. If I leave this building and I could walk any direction, right? And that an AI would completely or a ChatGPT large language learning model would completely destroy itself trying to compute that. But we can compute it, right? We can think forward and create. They can't. They can't create. They can only compute the past. And so you can guide them to help you compute the past and learn and compile things in a fascinatingly effective way that helps you as the forward thinker think forward with more ammunition.
Hmm.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Yeah. So how would a small business owner take that and use it in the ads world?
Yeah, so in your marketing and your ads, so a fun thing that I like to do is I'll go to ChatGPT or any of these large language learning models. There's Grok. You can find it on Twitter or X. You can find Gemini on Google. You can find ChatGPT on OpenAI. Everyone, I think even Microsoft has one. I can't remember what theirs is called. But there's a variety of them that you can access, most of them for free. Um, and you can approach them. The one thing that's important to do is help it get in the right mindset. So I'll start with a prompt that says, okay, you are now, and I tell it what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
You are now an expert marketer You've studied thoroughly this thought leader, this thought leader, this thought leader, this author in marketing, and you know their teachings, and you compile them to generate for me solutions to my questions. I need some advice, right? So you give it, and I like to give it really specifics like that. I like to say, you've learned, you've learned from David Ogilvy, you've learned from Russell Brunson, you've learned from Dan Kennedy, you've learned from, you know, Michael Matherson or whatever, all these fantastic marketing thought leaders, and using, you know, those pieces of knowledge now respond to me. Okay.
Mm.
And if you don't do that, you really don't know what it's referencing. If you're just like, I need to run an ad, give me some text. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's it pulling up? You have no clue what it's pulling up. It could be referencing some TV show that aired 3 days ago that I don't you don't even know, right? And so you make sure that it really knows its lane and that it's going to just blossom in that lane. And then the next prompt I like to give an AI thread, right? Because they learn everything you tell it. It learns from the previous. It continues to update its memory in this thread based on what you're talking about. So the next thing I like to say is, what do you want to know about me or my needs or my offer or my business, right? And you let it ask you some questions. If you skip that step, you really skip out on a lot of the personalization you could get. And those questions are often enlightening. Or there's, 5, 6, 7 questions that come up. Well, who's your target audience, or who's your, this and this and this, and what do you notice about your customers? And so you give it a lot of this information that sometimes makes you think, oh, okay. And then once it's fleshed out, and it knows kind of what lane to source from, and it knows more about you, and then you start asking it questions. Hey, I want to come up with a really good headline for this billboard I'm going to run, or this flyer I'm going to send out to my local market. What are the pain points that my customers are experiencing, and how should I phrase them in my flyer? You'll get really relevant and really good sales copy if you do that. And if you don't do that, you'll just get the average stuff, hum-ho stuff that won't really give you a good result. Is that helpful?
Oh man, those are incredible. Yeah,
Oh,
those are incredible pieces of advice. Especially just that idea of asking it what it needs to know. So many people
yeah,
probably
it's
haven't
fun
even
to,
thought of that.
yeah, and sometimes it'll ask you questions that you don't know how to answer very well.
Hmm.
So don't be scared to open up a new tab and start a new thread and discover the answers with it to the
Mm.
thing. Come back over here and give it the answer. So, for example, tell me about your target customer, your avatar, right? Might be one of its questions. And you're like, I don't know. And so you open up a new thread and you start a discussion over here. And sometimes those discussions are like, okay, I need, hey, ChatGPT, I need to brainstorm with you and discover who's my target, who's my avatar, who's my target market, who's my customer, and what do you need to know from me to find that out? And oftentimes it'll be, well, who's your competitors? And so you're like, well, my tightest competitor is this one and this person, or this, this brand or this brand. And well, what do you notice when they come in the shop? Well, I notice that they tend to be between the ages of 25 and 55. Okay, great. And what do and then all of a sudden you build it all in, and then it really helps you compile and think through things you might not have thought through, and you come up with your avatar, and then you can put it back over into there.
Mm, wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
And it takes some time. That's the thing, like to really think of it like you're doing your research paper from college or high school. You're going to spend some time in this library to get the good answers. If you just want to spit something out in 30 seconds or less, you'll get you'll get in proportion to the time you spent.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the more you dedicate to it, the better you'll get with it, and the better it'll get with you, right?
Yeah, right. And you'll get real good. And you could start one of these. You can name it, name the bot, name the thread. Like I actually do. I have a whole bunch of them. For example, a big family, right? There's 8 of us, and we travel around, and we don't always want to spend $1 billion to travel, right? So I have an entire bot that's dedicated to helping me plan trips.
Mm, wow.
I started out by telling him like, okay, you are an expert in travel, in domestic travel in the United States. You prioritize, these things. You don't look for, luxury high end, but we, you do favor nice middle class stuff. You also don't prioritize, anything in the cheap budget range. We don't do RV travel. We do these, we don't do these, we do these, we don't do these. Do you understand me? What else do you want to know about me and my family? These things are okay. And then as much as like, well, these are the people in my family. Here's their age ranges and gender, all this stuff. This is what we like to do. This is what we don't like to do. Okay, are you completely familiar? Are you thoroughly familiar with who I am and my family? Yes. Okay. Awesome. We're going to Arizona. What should we do? Right? And all of a sudden, just like, bam, the answers are amazing what you get back. It's really cool.
Wow, yeah. Well, I
Where
appreciate you.
should we eat? Where should we stay? What should we do? It's like,
Right.
I've got this amazing. And the more I interact with it, the better it gets because it continues to learn about me. And I'm, oh no, I don't actually really like Thai food. Cross that one off for the future discussions, whatever it is, right? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow. Yeah, I'd never even thought of turning AI into a travel agent for you.
the
Whole new
thing,
niche, right?
think about every single expert you wish you had in your back pocket, build it into an AI bot for yourself.
There you go.
Even with your religious studies, like they're really cool. Like I even have a bot that has, for example, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I have a bot in there that's called Prophets Only, right? And
Hmm.
I said, I taught the bot like you are only to reference teachings from this individual, this individual, this individual, listing only the prophets in our religion through, from the founding to the current, and those are the only sources it's supposed to tap into. And, and I give it a few other layers of instruction, and then I go and I ask questions and I plan lessons with it, and it's fascinating, and I make sure that it says, okay, you're always to give me the reference, I need the exact reference, and so it comes up with these really crazy paragraphs. I'm like, well, I had no idea, and then the reference there, and I could go read the original source. It's really fun.
That's critical, making sure you get the original reference to it too,
Yeah.
right? So you know it's not making something up for you.
And it will. That's the thing to realize, Jason. You can't just blindly trust it because these large language learning models will. So I don't know if you know this, by the way, there are some phenomenons that they've seen in these models that they can't solve. Even the finest developers can't solve it. And one is a watch face or a clock. If you tell the watch face to hey, make me an image and with the hands anywhere north of flat, right? So like 9, 10, or the clock face will always spit out the image, no matter if you generate 1,000 times and you try to be as specific as possible, it'll always spit out a clock where the hands are at 10 after 10. You can't get it to do other things. It's stuck. Because, like I said, it learned from the past. And we've learned through marketing and through the years, the most aesthetic position a clock can be in is 10 after 10. It's
Ah,
pretty, it's proportional. And so every marketing picture ever taken of a clock, every painting, everything, everyone who's ever tried to sell a clock, Seiko or anybody, always has it set at that time. And so you can't reteach this large language learn. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. This old dog is stuck on the 10 after 10. It won't do anything. It's wild. Same thing. Try to say, I would, generate an image of a man writing a paper with his left hand. It's
hmm.
always the right hand. You can't get the left hand to show up.
Hmm.
So so you got to think of these models as, basically an old dog that you can't teach new tricks to because in those senses, because you can't override the last 100 years of millions of iterations with your one iteration. It
Right.
has millions of examples of clocks set at 10 after 10, and you're telling it one thing different. You're one in a huge, you're one person in a room of a million. It doesn't recognize your prompt. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. Yeah.
But the same thing is that, yeah, so it'll blend things that are not true. And so you'll need to always reference your source.
Hmm. Because you may end up with 10 after 10 and you don't mean
Right. Yeah.
it. Well, I sure appreciate you taking all this time and sharing all these tidbits and with the audience. I love it. Is there a way people could get a hold of you if they're interested in doing business with you?
Yeah, for sure. You can find me on pretty much every social media platform with the handle John O. Parks, Johno. Last name is Parkes, has an E in there.
Perfect.
But yeah, whether it's on YouTube or Instagram or wherever, that's where you find me.
Well, thank you so much for taking all the time today and sharing all your tips with us. Really appreciate the knowledge that you're sharing with my audience.
Yeah, it was been fun, Jason. It's kind of a splattering of different things, but we had a good time.
Definitely. And thank you so much for listening to another episode of Small Business Big Visibility. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode.